Greetings, everyone. Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to a special edition of The Monster's Den. Davey, can we get any closer into the camera there? Yeah, look more and more menacing.
Any closer, my microphone's going to hit me in the head.
So we've come at you this week to do a little review of A Quiet Place, Day One, which Davey has just seen. I saw it the first weekend it came out, and I've been hoping that someone else on the show would go check it out so we could do a little review of it, because quite frankly, it's a major release in horror, sci-fi, fantasy, disaster, whatever you want to call it, and I think a pretty good addition to the series so far. So this is the third film, but a prequel to kind of lead in everything that we saw in the first film. So Davey just saw it, so I'm really curious to get his thoughts, as it's really fresh for him. Of course, this was written and directed by Michael Sarnowski, based on the story that he and John Krasinski had come up with a number of years ago. So Davey, what did you think? Pretty good cast, I thought.
Yeah, I mean, a few reasons why I was really excited about this one. You said it was great, first of all, which for the third in a series is always good to hear, because, it's very easy for a cash in. But you're right, the cast is another reason, because you've got Joseph Quinn, who's been a terrific actor for well over a decade on British TV, and he's now cracked America with Stranger Things, made him a really big star with Eddie was his character in season 5, the big Metallica phenomenon that came out of it, with him playing on top of the school and whatnot, that went viral and put Metallica back in the charts. Yes. So he became a bit of an icon thanks to that. He's going to be in Gladiator 2. Yep. And Lupita Nyong'o, great actress too. She was in 12 Years a Slave. Yeah, she's in the Marvel films. She was in the Star Wars. She's in the kind of Disney pantheon at the moment. And really, one of the also great stars here is, I don't know the name of it, but whoever plays Bilbo the cat is a terrific character as well. Yeah. It really is. It's a brilliant little cat that does some terrific stuff.
He's the star. He's the star of the movie. I mean, that's for sure. Yeah.
And then you've got the only one bit of casting that I thought, did we need that, was Jaimon Hounsou comes into it. He was in number 2, and he's the leader of the island in number 2. Yeah. And I thought, so why is he here? So that's a rather large coincidence that he's here, and then he's in the second one in a completely different part of the country, but well,
which leads to believe that there's some missing story to tell here, right?
Which leaves open. Although Krasinski says he doesn't want to exploit this too much, but by the end of it, I was thinking, I could go another 2 or 3 films with Joseph Quinn's character. Yeah. But this is also a lovely one and done. So if people haven't seen parts 1 and 2, this is its own thing. You don't need to see parts 1 and 2 to see this. This isn't part 3, and it's not a prequel that relies on any knowledge. It's a real standalone film that tells Lupita Nyong'o's story, really, from when the invasion of these creatures starts to the end of her life, which isn't a spoiler because we know she's dying at the start of the film of cancer even before the invasion.
Yeah. She's terrific in this. I really liked her in Us quite a bit, and she's proven to be a terrific actress. And I think you really feel for her. That's the one great thing about this movie. You could say, compared to the other 2 movies, maybe not quite as strong as the other 2, but like you said, it is a different film. It is not a continuation, and it's a perfect standalone film. And you really feel for this woman, right? You can see how much she's suffering and how much she has suffered, and the end is near. And her and the cat and him, they kind of take you on this journey through New York City and the subways and broken down houses, on the aftermath. And it's funny because this is literally day 1. So everything that happens in this film is just it's like boom, 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 boom. We're not talking weeks on end here. This is just a very short amount of time that it takes you through. And I think it's really well done. I think the cinematography is very good, and you get this feeling of dread throughout the whole movie, which I like a lot. But yeah, the cat is amazing. The cat has 9 lives. Just when you think that there's no way this cat is getting out of this scenario, still there, right?
And it doesn't do anything cheap with that. I thought it was going to be Chekhov's gun, and that the cat was going to be saved until they're in a really tight spot, and then meow, and then never happened. Never happened. I was convinced that would, because that's what happened with the baby in the first one.
Yeah.
So I was convinced that the cat was just, oh, that's just going to be the baby. But this was smarter. It's actually my favorite of the three. And I did care about the characters more. I thought the daughter in the second one was the strongest character, but the family are pretty generic. And whereas Peter Nyong'o's character is so interesting. She's a poet who's dying of cancer, and she's angry, but she's not overtly dislikable because of it. Yeah, she's taken out of her on her nurse and whatnot, but he understands. He's played by can't remember his name, but it was the older brother from Hereditary. And he's got a lot older now. But yeah, she takes it out on him, but she never becomes unlikable, but she's distant. And then when everybody's running, it's not a spoiler to say they don't tell you anything more about, which is another thing I love. They don't tell you why this has happened, who the creatures are. We don't get any more information, which is great. We should leave that just completely unknown. Krasinski understands that. But when everybody's running towards the sea to get on boats and try and get away from New York, she stays where she is because what she got to live for, she thinks. And then she meets Joe Quinn, and they've got a brilliant scene in the torrential rain. They always use rain in these films because the water stops them here, and then it's a good way to get a bit of talking. And he's got this great bit of dialogue where all he says is, I'm really scared, I don't want to die. But the way he delivers it with those massive eyes that Joseph Quinn's got, flooding with tears, it really sells you. It's a terrific actor. And then it becomes this very different family dynamic where it's not romantic. It's not even quite friends. No. It's just two people who
don't have anybody else, right?
Yeah, and who care for just know that they've not got anybody to care for them, so they care for each other at the end of all things.
Yeah. So basically, for those who know, he's a student who comes over from the UK to New York to go to school. And apparently, based on what was said, he just came over. So he hasn't been here all that long. He doesn't know anybody, he doesn't have anybody here. And here she is. She's dying. She doesn't have anybody but her cat. And part of her just wants to go do her thing and be. But he's like, he grabs onto her, right? He latches onto her. He doesn't want to be alone. And they find this kinship together. And the other thing I love about the story is, like, this whole thing of her going to go get pizza at Patsy's, right? Or something. Patsy's Pizza.
Patsy's,
in Harlem, right? And she has these memories of her father, who was a jazz musician, taking her to have pizza at Patsy's. And that's all she wants out of life now. I just want to go have Patsy's one more time, even though all this shit is going on. And he is determined to go make sure that she gets what she really wants. And he's like, we're gonna stick together. And I need someone. I want to help you bring this wish to creation. I think the whole second half of the movie is so well done. But on the same token, again, not to give away too much, but I think he sees where she's going as far as her life and whatnot. And I think the ending is very poignant and very, very well done.
Yeah, I mean, they tell you in the first scene that she's not just got cancer, but it's terminal. So yeah, she does think, why should I run? There's no point. But you do consistently think he should be going, he should be trying something. But then very quickly she establishes, no, he would stay and try and help her. He seems such a nice guy that he would do that. Yeah. And you're right about the motif, the fatherhoods that comes into, because to use a cliche, it's about family. Every film says it's about family. This film really is. Yeah. And it kind of drips it through the film. So at first we just think, well, she just wants pizza, she's just thinking, why not? I'm going to do whatever I want. And then, as you said, we find out her father used to, after every great piano performance of his, would take her for a slice of pizza. So the pizza really reminds her of time with her father.
It's the connection.
And then, and then the jumper that she's wearing throughout the film, she passes on to him. Why is she giving him the jumper? And then we see the photograph later in the film of the father, and it's his jumper. Yeah. So it's a lovely bit of storytelling. And Michael Sonorski, who directs the film, directed Pig with Nicolas Cage, which is another film that, on the face of it, could be silly. Guy gets his truffle pig stolen and goes after it, goes after the guys that took it. Could be silly, just like this could be silly. But he's got a brilliant way of making what should be silly into something not just serious, but realistic. You do believe when she says, "I'm going to go get pizza," that you think, "I'll come with you." That sounds like a good idea. Yeah. It's brilliantly constructed, brilliantly written, brilliantly performed, but it's also a brilliant monster movie at the same time.
It is, yes, it is, and I think that's what's so great about the first two films as well. Is I think that even though you don't see them constantly, they're there, and the scenes where whoever is trying to keep quiet with this and remember, these monsters don't see, everything's all by hearing, are in the vicinity, right? And just the tension that builds. I mean, I was sitting in this theater, the one scene where he and the cat are up in the rafters,
the rafters and the scaffolding and stuff.
Oh, that's brilliant. That was so good. So good.
Yeah, my heart was thumping at that scene, and that doesn't happen very often. It really is tense. And again, Joseph Quinn's such a dexterous performer, and he can use his face. He's a great mime to kind of tell you without having to make noises what he's feeling, what he's thinking. So that scene where he's climbing to get the cat, it's completely brilliant. You know exactly what's going through his head at every moment, and it's not always just, "Oh no, there's a monster." He's thinking a million different things, and you know what each of the ticks and inflections of his face are. It's a lovely scene. That I think the other great scare scene is probably the subway.
Yes.
That's a really tense scene too. And then it contrasts wonderfully with those lovely scenes. I think the most gorgeous scene in the film is the rain scene that I mentioned, where they first kind of meet, but then the jazz club when they actually go there is just, it's 5 minutes long, and it's absolutely beautiful. That is pure. That is the tone of the film Pig that I was talking about. It's like, how's a film like this got a scene so beautiful? When he's doing the magic tricks in total silence and she's playing to the audience, it was just gorgeous.
Yeah, it was really good.
Yeah, stunning. But then it never fails to remember, okay, the threat's still out there. Yeah. So the smallest thing obviously triggers these aliens. You know, if people aren't aware, then, because I know some people in the chat in particular, hello, Gary and co, they just watch these videos anyway, regardless of whether they've seen the movies. So even the smallest sound triggers them. So if you burped, the aliens would hear you, and you would be gone in a split second. It's not as if you get, it's really just, it's instant, faster than a hiccup. So they can't make any mistakes in this film whatsoever, or the other two, of course, as we find out very quickly at the start of the first film. Yeah. Oof. That was a hard scene with Bo, I think the first kid was called. But this really, I don't think we would have needed six of us to talk about this film, actually, even if we had all seen it, because all three of these films have been very simple. They're all 90 minutes long, which, yay, thank you. I love a 90-minute movie. I don't think you could stretch them much beyond that anyway for a general audience. But this format that they've come up with allows them to tell very human stories that uses the monster, but then it really is just talking about the people themselves.
Yeah.
It's not talking about how we're going to destroy these things. I mean, that comes up a little bit with the hearing aid in the first two, but it's not about that. It's about the relationships between parents and children, and two children together, and then a surrogate father in the second one. And in this case, two people with nobody to look after them, looking after each other at the end of all things.
It's all about persevering amid great adversity, right? I mean, that's what it's all about. And this film is no exception. I think, the one really interesting aspect for me, and my wife and I both said it when we were watching this in the theaters, they chose New York City as the setting for this, which I thought was really interesting. And as someone who was around and lived through it, I got really big 9/11 kind of chills watching this, because again, similar type thing. 9/11 planes hit the World Trade Center. destruction, tragedy, death, whatever, and then the aftermath is just like desolation and ash and smoke everywhere and nobody on the streets. And that's basically this movie as well. Instead of planes hitting the World Trade Center, is aliens coming down and basically just killing everybody and destroying everything. So it's very, very similar. This whole kind of feeling of like just menace and isolation and desolation. And they really captured that quite well in this movie.
Yeah, and you're right about the vibe of September the 11th, I suppose, because it doesn't have your normal disaster movie feels. This isn't, even though these are aliens coming to Earth, it's not Independence Day, folks.
Right.
It's quote unquote realistic. It's a semi-realistic take on what it would feel like. Everything is grounded in some kind of reality, some kind of truth, again, because they're establishing the characters. So they're not using cutouts like an Independence Day would, which goes for archetypes and goes for wooden characters where you can project things onto them. These are real people. They feel like real people who just happen to get caught up in a horrible situation. And it's never treated like exploitation cinema, with these creatures. And we know enough, the same about them now as we did in the first one. And I really appreciate that they're not feeling like they have to explain things. When they announced this, I thought, day one, is that what they're calling it? Okay, they're going to explain everything. We're going to be seeing those aliens in space, and we're going to see NASA talking, that kind of thing. No.
All we know is they're here. That's it.
It's exactly the same as when we see the baseball game in the Little League, I guess you call it, in the second one, where we see the flashback to how it starts for the family in the second one. It's exactly the same time that this is happening here. And exactly the same time that it's happening in Shanghai. I think it was Shanghai that we saw in the newspapers and one of the other ones. So it's all happening at the same time. And this is just another story that's happening at the same time. So it's not let's pull back the curtains a little bit more. No, it's just another human story. And for me, the most human story of the three so far, and just the most powerful. I think it's got, although people will know roughly what happens because all these films are reasonably similar, but still brilliant. That ending, I think, is one of the best last shots of a film I've seen in a long time. The last 30 seconds, absolutely brilliant. It's poetic. It's gorgeous. It should be dark. It could be sad, but it's powerful.
Yeah, you almost feel, I don't want to say happy for her, right? But it's like, but you know that that's the ending she wanted.
She's getting to go out on her own terms.
Yeah.
She's not going to trip up and knock over lampshades and then get taken. She knows that he's safe, so that's her big thing.
Yeah, the boat pulls away, right? Creatures are on the shore. Again, I hope we're not spoiling too much for folks, but
I guess we are now. But yeah,
the whole last minute or two of the movie is very, very well done. Yeah. But I felt very satisfied when the movie was over. But I also, at the same time, said to myself, I could go for another one.
Yeah,
I'm hoping they do at least one more because I think
I think
story to tell there. I think
I think Krasinski said they're doing a third one with the family.
Right.
So there'll be a finale for that story with the Emily Blunt storyline and whatnot with the daughter and the son, and maybe Cillian Murphy back if he's not been priced out of it after Oppenheimer.
I know, right? Yeah.
But yeah, regardless, the way they use time jumps in these, or the first two at least, you can get away with Cillian Murphy not being there. That's fine. But this one is, again, just such a good standalone story that even if it wasn't a Quiet Place franchise film, it just works as a brilliant film in its own right. You don't need to know anything. I mean, I mentioned that Djimon Hounsou returns from the second film. It doesn't matter if you don't know that.
No.
It doesn't establish much more about him. He's just another guy who's. If you
saw the second film, you're like, oh, there he is. But if you didn't, you would just be like, he's just another character in this film.
Yeah, right? And again, I think I would have taken that out because actually it made me just sit for a minute going, that's so stupid. He just happens to be here and in the other film.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, unless, as you say, they do something to fill in the gaps where that exact boat that Joe Quinn gets onto is the boat that gets to the exact island where the kids get to in the second one. But yeah, do you know what it reminds me of a little bit? A really, really slimmed down, which is the way I'd like it to be, Walking Dead. You know,
Yeah.
a lot of the visuals, a lot of the iconography, you know, just the way things look. But The Walking Dead is so bloated, especially after the first 3 or 4 seasons, so bloated. And there's a difference between being well paced and laid back and just being padded out to hell. And The Walking Dead just went that way far too often. This feels like that, where it knows exactly when to take 5 minutes and go to the jazz club and let them have a little bit of life, and then to bring in a little bit of threat again. And 90 minutes is perfect for that.
Yeah.
Not 11 seasons.
No. Yeah, I checked out. So
Yeah.
I made it all. You know, I not to derail the conversation, but I watched a good chunk of The Walking Dead. I think I when did I check out? It was not long after the comic actually ended, and they were going too far with the what. I'm totally forgetting the
Negan.
Well, yeah, but when the skinwalkers, was that what the ones they called?
Yeah.
It was that, and then the Commonwealth, right? That's I
Mhm.
checked out at that point. I'm like, all right, I've spent way too many years watching
Yeah.
this show, and I don't enjoy it anymore.
Yeah.
So the comic knew when to end. The show just kept on going, and now we get all these,
Yeah,
spin-offs.
and then it doesn't end because exactly the big season finale is that, hey, we're not going to kill anybody. We're just going to give them all spin-offs, and you
Yes.
get a spin-off, and you get a spin-off, and they've all got one.
Yeah.
Daryl's got one. Rick's got one. Negan and Maggie have got one. I think I've got one starting next month.
Why not, right?
Yeah. That'll be the lazy dead. I'll just be sitting there like.
And it's funny because, like, for years, Walking Dead was what we call here in the States water cooler discussion every Monday, right? So whether you work remotely or work in an office, right? Every Monday, everybody would talk about, did you see Walking Dead last night, right? But I noticed towards the end, and even recently with all the spinoffs and stuff, nobody's talking about The Walking Dead ever. I mean, that Rick and Michonne spinoff show, should have happened years ago when it was still, the show was still hot. I think they waited way too long, and nobody gives a crap anymore. Just might, because nobody, literally, I don't know anybody who talks about it anymore at all.
Yeah, and in fact, I mentioned those three. I forgot Daryl's got one in Paris.
Yes.
With Carol. So there's 4 spin-offs that came out after the show. And there was already Fear the Walking Dead, and then was it Tales from the Walking Dead, the anthology one. So yeah, I mean, that's just ripping the piss. Almost, and I'm sure it isn't, because John Krasinski's, it seems to have a really good touch for genre based on what he's come up with so far. But I'm sure that his idea wasn't a response to The Walking Dead, but it works as that with the Quiet Place films, where okay, they're not zombies, they're aliens. Well, presumably, we don't know. They could be manufactured and just rocketed in. We don't know.
Yeah.
But these creatures essentially stand in for zombies because they're still a threat, but they're just so much tighter. So the creatures don't get overused. They're used just peppered, so it's almost garnishing the steak rather than, feeling deprived for 6 months and then given a big juicy steak at the end of the season because half the casket's bumped off like The Walking Dead. So yeah, this is just much tighter filmmaking than anything than Walking Dead could ever pull off. And that's, of course, restrictions of, hey, this thing's done really well. We need to stretch this as much as we possibly can. Whereas, John Krasinski said, okay, these things have done well. We'll stretch this too, because we're on film 3, going for film 4. But it doesn't feel cynical. That's the difference. It doesn't feel like this is a spin-off because the other two have made 400 million each. Yeah. This feels like, no, this is actually a really good story to tell with really good actors.
Yeah. And I think also, too, one of the things I like about the success of this series so far, this franchise, is that there's very little dialogue. There's action, but it's not like boom, 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 nonstop action. The acting is very subtle, but very well done. And there's lots of tension. which, you know, again, makes me feel very happy that there is an audience out there for nonstop explosions and action and cursing and, you know, right? Because, and don't get me wrong, I love that stuff too, right? But there's a certain type of movie viewer who appreciates something like this kind of slow burn with lots of tension. And again, where you have to just sit and watch and use your mind and just pay attention to what's going on and not just like check your brain out and just be wowed for 90 minutes to 2 hours. Right. So I think,
and it's a tight balancing act because you're asking the audience to watch a lot of the film essentially as a silent movie.
Yeah.
So they come up with little interesting ways to make it possible for them to communicate. Or they come up with those tension-riddled scenes. So, for example, in the first one, if you remember, they had that great bit where they find a waterfall and they realize that's so loud that the monsters can't hear through it. And it's the first time they've been able to just talk out loud in ages.
Yeah.
In this one, they do the same. They find it's still just where the rain's just torrentially coming down, and they just scream.
Yeah.
Because, my God, what a few hours this has been. Aliens have crash landed to Earth and killed half of the city right in front of us, and we're not safe. Let's just have a primal scream. And they do. And it's a real cathartic moment for them and the audience. And it's moments like that, just again peppered throughout that break it up. You know, I think it would be interesting to do one of these completely silent. I don't think Hollywood would actually do that. I think they would always pull back and say, we need to do something.
Yeah.
You know, but I think this is as close as you possibly can while still making hundreds of millions at the box office.
Yeah. I saw when I went to see Deadpool and Wolverine, they show like a little, they have all this stuff they show before the movies, right? So they had a little interview with her about the making of this film. And she talked about how challenging it was to do things that you normally would do in real life, but trying to do it so you're not making much noise doing it. So she goes, I learned how to open doors differently, and I learned how to be more expressive walking down the street and all these little things that you would never even think about. She goes, I think that's what made the film turn out so good, is because we were paying special attention to all of that, because, you know, in the scenario that we were supposed to be in, you kind of had to, right? Because you these creatures are all over the place. You don't know where they are. So you have to, what you normally would take for granted in life, you had to rethink everything. So, I mean, and I thought they did a dynamite job in that.
Yeah, and down to, you know, when they open tuna cans and things, they have to use like a muffler almost, get a cloth and open the tuna can without making. So that's literally how much noise you can't make as a tuna can opening. Yeah. I mean, how do they snore? How do they pass wind? I mean,
they don't go that far into it. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, right? But literally, if a tuna can's that, then yeah, I mean, you have to suspend your disbelief that you can never make that kind of noise.
Right. Cough, because and sneeze, and all that. Yeah,
everything. Yeah, I mean, you can't muffle every single noise, but I guess that's why, you know, people keep dying in these films. But and that's another thing too. They always keep the cast very small. So even though we've got a lot of extras at the start in the city, which of course you need, the cast ends up being the same size as the one set out in the country with just the family and nobody else.
Yeah.
And that makes you focus on them, laser focused on them. There's no side stories. There's just this very one simple story. I mean, literally, let's be honest, this story is man and a woman in an alien invasion decide to go get a pizza, and one of them then gets on a boat.
That's it.
But it's not about that. It's right. As we said, it's family, and it's survival, and it's relationships that people, ultimately good people, can form, caring about each other even though they don't know each other from Jack when everything seems lost. You know, it's wonderful, tight storytelling, brilliantly directed, wonderfully acted, wonderfully written, looks gorgeous, looks like a massive budget film, even though again it's still relatively low budget for Hollywood. So fantastic stuff, highly recommended. And even though we've kind of spoiled a little bit, don't worry, it's not that kind of film. These are emotions. You can't really spoil emotions. It's not that kind of film about surprise. It's not Blumhouse. It's not twists.
Right.
It's just about feelings.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, go check it out, everybody. A Quiet Day, day one, 2 thumbs up from Davey and myself, and a great addition to the franchise. And I'm looking forward personally to see if they got any more cooking. So Tala likes it too. Yeah,
you better keep that noise down, Tala.
Yeah, I know, right?
They're out there. Oh, Bilbo the cat was quieter than that.
I know, much part. He was a pretty smart cat. So
Yeah.
So
the Hudson Valley will not be safe, unfortunately. But,
no, not at all. Not at all. They'll be out to get you, Tala. So if folks watching, if you've seen it, let us know what you think of the movie down in the comments below. And if you've been kind of waiting, don't wait. Go check it out. Go see it in the theaters if it's still out there. I'm not quite sure if it's still playing in the theaters now or not, but I know it's probably close to the end of its run. But I think it's done pretty well, right? I mean, I don't know what the box office has been so far, but
a little bit lower than the second, but still high enough to be no problem whatsoever. Yeah.
Well, I'll be getting the 4K when it comes out because I quite enjoy these films. So thanks for watching, everybody. Visit us on the web at www.seatranquility.org. We're on Facebook. We're on YouTube all together. All the damn time. We'll be back at you with the rest of the crew next week for our next installment of The Monsters Den. Till then, for David Gallagher, I am Pete Pardo. Thanks for watching, everybody. See you soon here on The Monsters Den. Take care, everybody.